The title of the story is Warning. Ismael Lopez, for a long time, every time he left his home, he seemed to see warning signs everywhere. If she looked up, it seemed to him that the shapes of the clouds were signals to him. They seemed to him like floating questions. If he passed through some meadow, it seemed to him that the harvested crops also formed strange signs. He couldn't explain that, but he was already convinced that they were some kind of warning. As in all long horror stories, it seemed that some providential power gave him notice that something not very good could happen. He kept thinking that because only he could see that, he was a perfectly normal guy, lived alone, didn't even have a pet, and was just plain clumsy when it came to running a home. He didn't consider himself special, far from it. He had never done anything heroic. He wasn't a man of faith. His best achievement was getting through life unnoticed. For this reason, he was surprised that it was precisely him who noticed these warnings, which were already impossible to ignore. Inside himself he knew that something bad would happen. At first he was amused, because he thought it was the fruit of his imagination, but it was too much, it couldn't be casual. That day, he arrived at his home, and before entering he saw someone very tall standing in the living room. He thought to notify the authorities, but he was too curious, so he went inside. He could immediately see that there was not one, there were many, and they were not human beings, they were angelic. As he was surprised, it only occurred to him to ask what they were doing in his house. She questioned without thinking, only taken by surprise. The clothing of the angels was an overcoat, the largest. He took it off and put it aside. At that moment he realized that they were angels. "We come for your help. We are on the eve of the apocalypse. It is not long in coming, and since you are really neutral, you do not profess faith for anyone. We need you to be in our group. We have no side. We are neither with God nor with Satan. We are trying to get humanity to be with us and for you to be the spokesperson for the angels." That took him by surprise. It was hard for him to believe it. It was clear that he was not dreaming, and he finally understood what all the signs meant. They communicated with him for a long time. He was the one who did not read the messages correctly. This request generated enormous doubt in Ismael. For whom would he choose, for the angels or for God? He really had never considered being a man of religion. That angelic being read Ishmael's thoughts, and told him that they only wanted him to found a religion, so that they venerate the angels, just as they do with God. He told him that they would reward him amply, and that he would be the king of where he chose. He would be a privileged man in the world of angels. He also told him that they had contacted others in various parts of the world, and they all had the same doubt for a while, but ended up accepting. They asked him about the decision he would make, what it would be. Without thinking about it any more, he replied to the angel, "I decide for the only God." At that moment the angel that until that moment looked angelic, became a demon, drew a sword and tried to kill Ismael, but God intervened and saved him. He led the insurgent angels out of the house, protecting him. At that moment Ishmael woke up, falling to the floor from bed. It was all a terrible dream. He continued with his life as if nothing had happened, but he became a man of faith. From that day on he began to preach the love of God. One day when he was leaving for his work, he saw the shadow of an angel fluttering on the floor, but when he looked at the sky he saw nothing. God continued to defend him. Now he was his son and he would always protect him, and he would no longer be part of the narrative of long horror stories. If you want to read more about this type of stories, you can see Morals.